Hello plant friends, my name is Victoria and you're watching Plantastics. Today I'm going to be going through all the things that I do, from unpackaging violets to getting in them in the pots, and pretty much all the things that I do when I get new violets in the mail. The first thing I like to do is I like to go through and get the packing slip, which is normally on the very top of the box, and I like to make labels if the plants don't already have labels. So these are from a seller that does not put labels on the plants. So I like to make labels as soon as I get that packing slip out. And they don't really do substitutions. So pretty much what you see and purchase online is what you're going to get. There aren't really any surprises. I like this label maker. It's amazing. I've had it like for over 6 months and it just does a really great job. The labels don't fade. I have only purchased and used the name brand labels, so I can't speak to other ones. And I've used it enough to where I can use the letters pretty quickly, even though it's not a QWERTY keyboard, which is what I type on daily on my laptop. So I've got the labels and I'm going to cut them and put them on there. And I like for them to all go the same direction, if that makes sense. So that way I look at them immediately and I can read it the correct direction. So if you are doing lots of labels, you'll see that there's a right way and a wrong way. And the right way is whatever is best for you. But I like to read from left to right. So I put the first of the label on there so it reads from left to right. Something else I like to do that I didn't do in this video, but I did afterwards, is I put the date on the actual tab that's actually in the soil. You can't see it, but it is on the label. I also like to put every violet that is just coming in into a spreadsheet with the date, the vendor, the grower, what size I got it in, was it a plantlet or a leaf, and then I put the size, whether it was a standard, a miniature, a semi-miniature, and who I got it from. Like, okay, so let's say the distributor was Lowe's and the grower was Optimara. So I'll fill all of those out, and then I have another section for DOD, so date of death. So if I lose a violet, I say when I lost it and what I think caused it, and I do a strike through. So at this point, I have had 41 violets, and I lost 19 of those most recently. So I am ordering a lot of them right now and trading with a lot of people to rebuild my collection. And I don't really order a ton of violets otherwise. I pretty much kind of just got my collection and tended to them, because violets are something that you kind of have to take care of, if that makes sense. So you need to be repotting every 3 to 6 months, deadheading and grooming for symmetry. And I'm going to show you some videos of some plantlets over time and how I groom those to be more symmetrical. I am still learning. I'm subscribed to the African Violet Society of America magazine, as well as the other books that they have, like Growing to Show. Those are really great resources, and I have learned a lot from those, as well as other people that are growing. We don't have African Violet shows or even a African Violet Society in my area, so I pretty much am just learning everything from online or other resources. So what I've done is I have gotten these self-watering pots. Those were the best thing that I ever purchased in terms of having African violets. In college, I had a windowsill of 4 or 5 violets, and I didn't use artificial light. I didn't use self-watering planters. I didn't fertilize. I did repot once a year, but like I didn't care for them in the same way I care for my violets now. And I would have maybe once a year where all of them would bloom. And it was something that I super celebrated and like jumped up and down for. And now I literally have blooms all the time. So it just goes to show that, you may, learn from me, you may learn from a book. Like, just be sure to try things, and whenever something works, don't change it, But whenever something's not working, allow there to be 3 to 6 months in between you changing just to see, because there is a delay whenever you start a new fertilizing routine or new grow lights before you actually see the true effect of everything that you've changed. So this is a seller that I've purchased from before. I do enjoy purchasing from them. Their African violets are never great. And I say that not as a way of like, not to say that I don't recommend them. I highly recommend them for other plants, but in terms of African violets, I've had extremely mixed things. I've only ordered violets from them, I think 3 times. But yeah, so this is a violet I will never own. It is Rose Bouquet, I believe. And every time I get one, it dies. I don't know what it is. It's just written in the stars. Like, I'm not supposed to have this variety, basically. But yeah, so I take them out, and what I'm doing is I'm removing these outer leaves. The plant has sacrificed those because it is basically dried up. And those leaves will not, like, reanimate, if that makes sense. They're gone. They're not coming back. So I have those tossed to the side, and the petiole is completely flimsy and floppy on the leaf that I did remove. So I can cut that off and cut to the leaf and see if I can propagate from there, but it's just really in bad shape. So I like to have the soil to be like to the texture to where if you put it in your palm and make a fist, it still stays intact. And that just allows the roots to get at least a little touch of moisture, and it's easier to maneuver the soil. It's more like Play-Doh, so you can kind of push it down and push it around the roots and it'll stay. And yeah, so there's random sticks in this soil. It's the Miracle-Gro potting mix soil mixed with perlite and vermiculite. It's not as much vermiculite as I usually use. There's like no vermiculite anywhere. I ended up having to order some. Don't know why that is, but it is what it is. So what I like to do is I like to spray around the roots, and I do this instead of just using a watering pail because the soil has such large pieces, and it just allows me to saturate the soil without disturbing the soil. Because if I were to use like a water pail, it would just be so much more water. I also have greater control on where the water goes, and that just prevents me from getting water on the leaves. Now, if you do get water on the leaves, it's not the end of the world. It's nothing to fret about. You do want to have it somewhere where there's a lot of air movement, though, so the water can dry, and you don't want direct light to get on the leaves because the water will be magnified. So Rose Bouquet was a standard. This is Toy Castle, and it is actually a miniature. This one was in really great shape. So this is a mature plantlet for this size. So this is a fully kind of grown miniature, and this is about the biggest it's going to get. The other one was a standard plantlet. So it's basically just a baby, and it's going to get a lot larger. So this miniature that I have, the Toy Castle, it'll stay in a pot this size probably for its entire life, and I'll just remove suckers and pot them in their own pots. Now, Rose Bouquet, it's a standard, so it is going to get larger. So you can think of violets as having like a maximum size with a single rosette, and then everything below that is basically them maturing up to that size. And if they have multiple crowns, that they can be larger than that, but I'm referring to a single crown when I'm talking about that. But yeah, so there's different sizes of violets, and sometimes you'll purchase a violet and somebody will say it's a miniature when it's just a baby standard. So it just really depends, but there's semi-miniatures, there's micros. Like I have one micro, and the full plant is about the size of a quarter. It's a very small plant. Miniatures, there's trailers, and trailers are going to trail. I don't know how else to say it, but they're going to have multiple rosettes, and they just grow like that. Now, most of the standards I have, I keep them as a single rosette, and when they have multiple suckers or baby plants, I remove those. And sometimes I'll remove those before they're even, mature enough to survive on their own, and I'll just throw them away because I'm trying to get the plants to bloom. And whenever they're forming all those little baby plants, it's taking away the energy from them being able to bloom and put out new leaves. So I do that now. This one will stay the size. And I just recently found these pots, and they're perfect. Before I found them, I would use smart water bottles and make my own little wicking pots. And that was really cool. But I don't really drink a lot of water from water bottles. I really use a lot of reusable ones. And I was literally purchasing water just to use the bottles for violets. So I purchased these so I can continue to just kind of reuse them. And then there's less algae able to grow because the pots are opaque. This is the African Violet Water Sprite, and it did okay. It's got some leaf damage. I'm doing this voiceover a week from when I unboxed these. But yeah, it's got a little bit of leaf damage now, and I don't really know what caused that, but it's in quarantine. So I do quarantine these for some time, and I do that because you never know what you're bringing into your house. It's like the Trojan horse, like you have this beautiful blooming flower, and then you find out, oh no, it has thrips. I've never had thrips. Knock on wood, I hope I never do. They sound very traumatizing. I've had cyclamen mites, which was traumatizing. But yeah, you just never know what you have. And then some plants will have viruses, and they will be asymptomatic until they are so infected. And then once they start showing symptoms, I mean, you got to start looking everywhere because you don't know what spread to what. But yeah, so here I have it. You can see how I have it potted. It's not too deep. It's not too shallow. And I'm just putting around the soil. Also, the way they package these, they have all the leaves pointing up, and it takes a really, really long time for them to flatten out. It's just another thing I don't like that they do. And that's just another thing that they do that I just don't really care for. So what I do is I do not fertilize. I do not use any kind of thing other than just plain water on these violets for the first week or two. And that's simply because they basically have like open wounds, and you putting fertilizer on the roots before they have a chance to establish is like you pouring lemon juice in paper cuts for them. So just don't do it. Just use water. This is regular tap water. I don't really see a difference between using tap water or distilled on my violets. Now, other plants, it matters a lot. Peace lilies, calatheas, and Miltoniopsis, they do not like mineral buildup at all. So what I like to do is just use regular water, and you can see there's just a couple of drops in there. And after a few days, I'll fill the reservoir to where it's full. But for the first couple days, I just give those roots a chance to grow. Now I have them basically on a shelf. They're away from any other violets. And I'm filling up the reservoirs, as you can see, with just a little bit more water. And yeah, so that's what you do. You really want to saturate that root ball and make sure that it's completely saturated. And you want to get enough water that drains down so that way the wick can kind of get activated and start pulling water into the soil. And that's pretty much what you're going to do. Now, these are going to have to take maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the leaves lay flat, simply because of the way that they were packaged. Now, there are always leaves that come off when you're unboxing. And what I do is I make little holes in these little propagation containers, and I create labels. And what I like to do is I like to cut the leaves and the petiole. So I cut the petiole at an angle so that way there's more surface area for the leaves to absorb water so they don't dehydrate. And I also cut the leaves. I cut the leaves because I can't fit them in here otherwise. I'm sure there's someone else that has a more sciencey explanation, but I just do it because I can't fit them in here. And I have these little covers on top of them simply because my house is really dry right now and I can't water them every 6 hours otherwise. So I have those domes on there. Basically, you can see it kind of in the bottom right of the corner. I have another dome and it's just empty. But the soil mixture is the same. It is equal parts perlite, vermiculite, and then soil. But yeah, and you can see I have dates on every single one of these, and that's just so you can keep up with who is and isn't growing and who is kind of ahead and behind. So I hope that this video was helpful. If you liked it, give it a like. If you really love this video, be sure to subscribe so you can hang out with me next time. All right. Thank you so much. Goodbye.